Unmute.
There we go. How many years have we been saying that? Unmute, unmute. Can you hear me now? Can we click on to the next slide, please? So really, I'm going to go through what we kind of call a 5x5 steps to entry. They're pretty simple when you talk about them, but the amount of companies we see entering the UK and other markets, because we work in other markets around the world, where people kind of just forget some of the simple steps, what you've got to take in. It is really a very much back to basics. So the first step, if we can move on to the next slide, please, is your product. Really take some time just to step back and look at your product. When you're going to come to the UK, do some market research, understand the different types of retailers. Like Peter said, we've got big players like Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury's, but we also have smaller sections of that market, and understand what those retailers are looking for. You know, understand whether it, as I say, it's a major multiple or a discounter. Look, you can do this online. There's plenty of people, ECRM, IGD, where you can get this information. But look at the category. What does it look like? Well, where is your product going to fit on that category? I'll give you an example. We worked with a maple syrup company from Canada. They had a superb product, but the jar was about 8 inches high. They hadn't done any research at all. So we had to go to them and say, look, there's nowhere for it to fit on shelf. It's going to only fit on the top shelf. Do you want to reformulate it? Do you want to repackage it? But look at these things when you're doing the market research. And actually, when you're thinking of your brand, think of the USPs it's got. We all think we've got the greatest brand in the world, but what's special about it? Where is that strategically going to fit in line with Tesco's buying policy or in Asda's policy? Really understand those unique benefits you've got. You're looking at price point. Just because it sells for €3 in Europe, doesn't necessarily that's going to convert to £3.50 in the UK and sell. The market may well be higher, or probably, knowing the UK, it's probably going to be a little bit lower. So understand the price points that you want to move into. As I say, understand those retailers, because some of the retailers work high-low pricing, some of them work on EDLP, but it's understanding where you're going to position your brand. So when you come to present to that retailer, you've got it in there. And also understand the current trends that are happening. In the UK, we have legislation that's just come by, which is high fat, high salt, high sugar. If your product's like that, I'm not saying there's not an opportunity, but if you're wanting secondary displays, the retailers are not allowed to put those products on what we'd call a secondary display on an end cap anymore in the UK. So actually, where are you going to target if you fall into that category? Think about sustainability. If you've got lots of plastic in your product that's not recyclable, understand that obviously these trends are everywhere in Europe and the wider world in North America, but at the moment there's a real drive on those within our retailers, especially the major multiples. And actually think, is your brand, do you want to go in as a branded product? Or there's opportunity where maybe you want to go as an own label supplier. But if you're going to be an own label supplier, make sure you've got all the correct accreditation for your factory and where you produce your product. Because that is the first question they'll ask, and you will be audited, and you'll be audited regular. So make sure you have all your paperwork in line before you even start looking any further. So that encompasses the product. If we can move on to step 2, with where what we do, we also, the big point is commerciality. Create a business plan. After that research, understand what retailers you want to go for, but create something what we'd call an ode entry business plan, an optimum, desirable, and essential business plan. Who would you really want to play in? You know, who do you want to focus on? Is it Tesco's, or is it Waitrose, a more premium retailer? But pull that down onto a business plan first, and then start looking from a margin point of view about your cost of goods, and make sure you capture every cost that's going to be applicable to the UK. Like Peter said, at the moment, it's great because retailers are accepting price increases. It's probably the first time in 2 or 3 years that retailers in the UK have taken a price increase. Before this, they've pushed it straight back. So actually, when you're working through your margin analysis, make sure you've built in some inflation in there. Make sure you're capturing transport costs to the UK, everything's going up, warehousing costs to the UK, and really make sure you've got all that. So actually, when you're coming to pull your 3-year profit and loss together, you've captured everything. And understand what level of investment you're gonna spend on the account above the line. Are you gonna put shippers into stores? Are you gonna do a social media campaign? And all these things are, you do it for your own market, but people go into a new market and think, oh, it's going to be dead easy. I'm a success in France, I'm going to be a success in the UK. But actually, without planning this and looking at that financial plan, 3 years is really challenging. But be realistic. A lot of brands in year 1 and 2 entering a new market are going to make a loss. Are you prepared to do that? And then year 3, it will come back, because all your investment has been at the front end to build some brand awareness. But by year 3, you start seeing the benefits of that. You start seeing efficiencies because you've got the volume in your factory, and actually your margin is starting to gain. And just remember as well, the UK, Brexit, we're out of Europe now, so there is duty applied on certain products as well. So make sure you're capturing every single one of those costs. So that's kind of commerciality. If we move on to step 3, which is all about targeting your route to market. Can we move on, please? And that entry strategy, there's a number of ways you can do this. Depending who you want to go for, you could go direct. So if you want to deal with the multiples, you could manage it all from your country, come and do market visits and hold those meetings, and you manage it all. But bearing in mind, if you're going to do direct, you're going to have to be responsible for organising warehousing, making sure you've got the right transport people in place, and that is going to be a regular visit. So multiples like to see suppliers roughly every month, if not more, depending on how big you're going to be within this market. So actually, do you think about a distributor? Well, distributors are great if you want to go after that speciality sector, the Cotswold Fair, the Hyder of this. But the reality, if you're dealing with it, if you're wanting the malts, they're not really going to deal with a distributor to start with. Okay, they take ownership of your goods, but what will happen is the multiples will circumnavigate that distributor because they know there's a margin there and come direct to you. So actually, it's all about targeting that route and targeting those accounts, back to the previous comments. But distributors work great in certain sectors of the UK market. Or do you look at a sales agent? A sales agent will predominantly work on commission, but again, you've got all those background costs that you have if you're dealing direct. So setting up with warehousing, setting up with transport. But also the other option is working with a team like us. A bit of sales pitch here, but the Realising Potential Partnership Limited, we can manage all this. And what we do, we kind of work on a retainer. There's other people to us where we work on a retainer, but we can manage all those elements of your entry strategy into the UK and deal with the buyers. We set up logistics and transport, but also work in tandem with people like, ECRM, who really target the accounts, and RangeMe, where I think before I joined, they went through a process of how RangeMe works. And we have worked with RangeMe in the US, and we're starting to work with them across Europe. And they're a great platform to have. So they can actually really target your buyers. Make sure when you load up onto that portal, though, that you've got all the information there. So there is various methods, and there's not one simple solution. It all depends on kind of what you're wanting from the UK market. So one of the big things as well, if we move on to the next slide, is compliance in the market. As we touched on earlier, we're in post-Brexit situation now where there is extra paperwork and there is added delays in coming to the UK. Whereas before you probably could get a product from Europe into the UK within a week. Actually, it's taken a lot longer now. There's lots of customs checks. Look at your labelling. Make sure you've got the right nutritionals, because some nutritionals are changing all the while. Make sure these checks happen. But also, look at the wording on your label. I can always remember an American company coming to the UK. They put cilantro on the label. Yep, we speak the same language as America, but cilantro in the UK is coriander. Think of things like that. Check the language and how it's perceived. And ingredients, make sure the ingredients are illegal in the UK. There's a big one, again, America in bread, they put potassium bromate in their bread to preserve it, to make it last longer. It's actually illegal in the UK. So make sure you've sense checked every single ingredient, that it's suitable for the UK and acceptable. Trademarks, make sure you've got your trademark registered. You know, we've learned from experience on this. We work with a brand called Predator. You know, great brand. It's an adaptogen energy drink, really healthy, to compete with Red Bull. We go out, start selling it, and actually, Coca-Cola have registered that trademark. The people we was dealing with hadn't done that full check. So it's about making sure you've got those trademarks in place, because it could become very costly if you make the mistake. And as I said earlier, you know, customs, they're a right royal pain at the moment to get into the UK, a pain in the backside, because they're checking every single item that tends to be coming in from outside of the UK is going through rigorous checks. Hopefully it'll ease off. But just bear that in mind when, you know, setting up and you're wanting to launch, say in 3 months in the UK, that you've built in time for product to get into the UK market. And I think really if we move on to the next step, kind of the last thing, really things that we say to everybody to consider. It takes time and commitment. You know, buyers will see, you know, in tandem with Range Meet, they will look at a product when they're ready, when they want to make a change to their category. They have a category review once a year when they ask for information, and halfway through the year, they normally have another check. So bear that in mind. It's going to take time. It's going to take commitment. You know, you're an unknown brand entering a UK market. We work with a global player outside of the UK in olive oil. They're number 1 to number 3 in that market. It took us 9 months just to get in front of a buyer. And that's realism. That's the fact of life. It doesn't take one email, one phone call. It's numerous and building up a story. So every time you're communicating with a buyer, you're giving them a story. But, you know, going back to your brand, keep things simple. You can see there's a box of chocolates by Thornton's. This was one of the first projects we did in the UK. That classic box of chocolates sold everywhere in the UK. And actually, switch it around a minute, we was looking at taking it abroad. So do something simple. All we did was put a different lid on it, put a union flag on it, kept it simple for the factory, kept it nice and easy internally, and it was a great success. So think things like that, just try and keep it simple. You know, market visits, you know, if you're going to come to the UK, come for the right reasons. Come so you've got connections with the buyer, whether that's through, you know, ECRM, working with ECRM and Range Meet, or actually through direct conversations you have. Because, yeah, it'd be great, you know, the UK embassies hold wonderful events, and your countries will hold wonderful events within the country. But actually, the people who are going there are the people who want a glass of champagne and a nice sandwich from the you know, head office at Tesco's. It's not necessarily the Tesco's buyers. So actually, do your homework, you know, and stick to that business plan you set up that we spoke about earlier. You know, it's really important that you know what you want when you come into the UK and you enter your strategy. But you've got a plan B as well, because plan A will probably not land. Plan B might not, but plan C will. So make sure you've done your homework, you know the steps, you plan for every eventuality. And understand, going back to that point of accessing retailers, keep it targeted. And that is where, you know, we have seen, like Peter said, and we've all said, over the last 10 years, ECRM has been great for us, and more latterly the Range Meet platform, because you can target the retailers you want. You get time with the buyer, which is really important, because you can attend a trade show. You can come to IFE, which happens every year in March. But actually, what you want is time with the buyer, and that's what ECRM gives you, that 10, 20 minutes time with the buyer, which is pivotal. But make sure when you do get in front of that buyer, you've kept it simple, you've done your homework, you've got your presentation right, so you make the biggest impact. You have 1, maybe 2 chances with the buyer.
Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it, and wish you a wonderful evening or afternoon. Take care.